April 1241, Western Poland. The most formidable military force the medieval world had yet produced was moving toward a collision with the finest heavy cavalry Europe could assemble. What unfolded over the following 3 days would demolish the myth of European military supremacy and leave a wound in the memory of Christendom that took generations to fade. The Mongols had arrived. To grasp the scale of what this meant, one must first abandon the image of a disorganized horde. These were the heirs of Genghis Khan's military revolution, a force that had swept from the Pacific coast to the doorstep of Europe within 2 generations. Every Mongol warrior had ridden before he could walk steadily. He could place an arrow with lethal accuracy at full gallop. He could cover distances on dried meat and mare's milk that European armies would have considered physically impossible. By 1241, the Mongol Empire ran from China to the borders of the Christian world. Great Central Asian cities had been leveled. The most powerful Islamic kingdoms had been crushed. The Great Wall of China had proven entirely ineffective. Even the Rus lands, Kiev among them, had been reduced to ash. Now under Batu Khan, grandson of Genghis himself, 2 divisions of roughly 20,000 warriors had already torn through Hungary and were methodically eliminating any force capable of threatening the Mongol western flank. Lublin had burned. Sandomierz had fallen. They were turning towards Silesia. Duke Henry II of Silesia, known as Henry the Pious for his religious devotion, understood perfectly what was coming. Messengers from the east had been arriving in waves, each report more horrifying than the last. Cities erased in a single day, populations killed to the last survivor. Armies with centuries of tradition, destroyed in hours. The accounts described riders who moved and communicated with an almost supernatural coherence, who struck without warning and vanished before a response could be organized. Henry was no coward and no fool. He had commanded armies before. He also understood that if the Mongols were not halted here, there was nothing between them and the Atlantic coast. He sent for help, and in what would prove to be one of the largest coalition military efforts of the medieval period, Europe answered. The response to Henry's call was remarkable. The Knights Templar, warrior monks hardened by decades of crusading, rode to answer it. The Teutonic Knights, fresh from their Baltic campaigns, marched south with their heavy cavalry. Polish nobles from across a politically fragmented kingdom temporarily set aside their disputes and brought their retinues. Moravian infantry marched north. Even miners from Silesia's wealthy silver districts, men with no military background whatsoever, stepped forward to defend their faith and their homeland. Medieval chroniclers, writing with fear and hope in equal measure, claimed 100,000 men gathered under Henry's banner. Modern historians, working from population records and logistical constraints, place the actual figure somewhere between 25 and 40,000. Even the lower estimate represented one of the largest European armies of the era, larger than William the Conqueror's invasion force, comparable to the grandest armies of the Third Crusade. Against them stood roughly 20,000 Mongols under commanders named Baidar and Kadan. Neither man was the barbarian of European imagination. Baidar was a grandson of Genghis Khan, raised entirely within the tradition of strategic warfare. Kadan was the son of Ogedei Khan, the reigning great Khan of the entire empire. Both had spent years studying European military methods through a network of intelligence agents, merchants and travelers who reported back with detailed observations of how Christian armies fought, what they excelled at, and precisely where they broke down. What they had learned was this. The mounted knight was the dominant weapon of European warfare. Hundreds of pounds of man, armor, and horse concentrated into a charge that could destroy any infantry formation. But knights were slow. Their horses, bred for power rather than endurance, tired rapidly under the weight they carried. Knights fought for individual distinction, frequently breaking formation to pursue personal glory or single combat. Most critically, European doctrine was built around closing to melee range, blade against blade, while Mongol doctrine was built around killing the enemy before he reached you. The Europeans had superior numbers, superior armor, and the blessing of the Pope. They believed God stood with them. They were about to discover that tactical sophistication could render all of that irrelevant. April 7th. The European army advanced in traditional formation, a sight that would have stirred any medieval heart. Heavy cavalry occupied the center, knights in chainmail and early plate, lances raised, destriers stamping beneath them. Infantry spread along the flanks, Polish spearmen, Moravian crossbowmen, Silesian miners with improvised weapons. Priests moved through the ranks offering blessings. Banners flew. The Black Cross of the Teutonic Order, the Red Cross of the Templars, the White Eagle of Poland. Then the dust appeared on the horizon, light, dispersed, moving strangely. Mongol horse archers emerged like figures from a distance, small men on compact, unimpressive-looking mounts. The knights actually laughed. These were the demons they had been warned about? The laughter stopped when the arrows began falling. Mongol composite bows, constructed from layered horn, sinew, and wood, were accurate at 350 meters, nearly double the effective range of a European crossbow. The riders fired in organized volleys, wheeled and retreated before any countercharge could be organized. Each warrior carried 60 arrows. Supply horses carried hundreds more. 20,000 archers times 60 arrows, 1.2 million projectiles available on the first day alone. For hours, wave after wave of horse archers struck and withdrew. Knights trained for the crash of close combat stood instead as stationary targets. Horses screamed as shafts found the gaps between armor plates. Infantry, less protected, suffered worse. Duke Henry refused permission to charge. He recognized the tactic and knew it was designed to pull his formations apart. But holding position while being methodically bled was corroding morale faster than any charge could have. By nightfall, hundreds of Europeans were dead or wounded. The Mongols had lost perhaps a dozen men to crossbow fire. Mongol war drums sounded all night, deliberately preventing sleep. The second day brought a fateful decision. Under pressure from his exhausted and furious commanders, Henry authorized a partial cavalry charge. 2,000 knights under Duke Mieszko of Opoln, intended to scatter the horse archers and restore morale. The Mongols fled convincingly. The knights pursued, formation dissolving over miles of open ground, horses tiring under the weight of their riders. It was the feigned retreat, the Mongols' most practiced tactic, refined across a generation of warfare on 3 continents. When the trap closed, hidden heavy cavalry emerged from the terrain, while light units circled from every direction. Of the 2,000 knights who had charged that morning, fewer than 200 reached Henry's camp. Mieszko himself died with 5 arrows in him. His head arrived at the European camp that evening, preserved in salt, with a message in broken Latin, "Tomorrow you." April 9th, Henry's war council convened in barely suppressed panic. A quarter of the army was gone. The Moravian infantry were close to deserting. Several nobles had already slipped away during the night. Retreat was not genuinely an option. Mongol cavalry would run down any column attempting to withdraw across open ground. The only viable choice was to stand, choose ground carefully, and make one final concentrated effort. Henry selected a field near the village of Legnicki Pole. A gentle rise offered his archers a modest advantage. A stream on one flank reduced the risk of encirclement. He placed the Templars and Teutonic Knights at the center, men bound by religious vows who would not break, with Polish cavalry on the right and infantry on the left. As the morning mist lifted, the Mongols appeared. They were dragging wheeled devices the Europeans did not recognize, large containers mounted on frames. Observers assumed they were ritual objects or cooking equipment. They were Chinese smoke-generating weapons, technology acquired during the Mongol conquest of northern China. When ignited, the devices produced dense, choking clouds that rolled across the entire formation within minutes. The European command structure, entirely dependent on visible banners and shouted orders, collapsed almost immediately. Units lost contact. Knights rode into their own infantry. Horses, panicking in the smoke, became unmanageable. Then came the final psychological stroke. The Mongols had spent days coaching Polish prisoners to shout a single phrase, "Fly, fly, all is lost." Now, in the smoke and chaos, Mongol warriors screamed these words across the battlefield in Polish. Soldiers who could not see through the haze, hearing what sounded like their own commanders ordering retreat, broke and ran. The infantry on the left wing dissolved first. The Templars and Teutonic Knights, abandoned on both sides, formed defensive circles and fought until they were physically destroyed. The Templar Grandmaster was found with 23 arrows in his body, his sword broken, surrounded by Mongol dead. The Teutonic Knights attempted a fighting withdrawal, punching through the Mongol lines in a wedge formation, only to find themselves alone in open country, pursued and run down as their horses gave out beneath them. Duke Henry rode forward to rally his dissolving army, his personal banner raised as a rallying point. A Mongol arrow struck him in the armpit, where the plates of his armor met. He stayed mounted briefly, then fell. His bodyguards died around him. The last organized resistance ended. His head was mounted on a spear and paraded before the walls of Legnica. His mother, searching the field days later, identified him only by the 6 toes on his left foot. By noon, 9 large leather sacks had been filled with the right ears of the European dead, the Mongol method of counting casualties. Estimates range from 10 to 25,000 killed. The Mongols lost fewer than 700 men. The battlefield was so dense with bodies that in places a person could walk for hundreds of yards without stepping on open ground. News of Legnica spread across Europe with the speed of catastrophe. Paris reinforced its walls. Rome called for a crusade directed not at the Holy Land, but at the Eastern Plains. Even the Holy Roman Emperor and the Pope, locked in a bitter political conflict, found grounds for mutual communication in the face of what had just happened. One German chronicler captured the collective mood precisely. The finest warriors in Christendom had been handled like children. Europe was saved not by any military response but by an event in Mongolia. 8 months after Legnica, the great Khan Ogedei died, reportedly from heavy drinking, though some sources suggest poison. Mongol law required all members of the royal family to return and participate in selecting a successor. Batu Khan, frustrated but bound by tradition, withdrew. The Mongols never penetrated this deeply into Europe again. But the lesson remained. Legnica demonstrated in 3 days what no amount of peacetime theorizing could have communicated: that individual valor, heavy armor, and chivalric tradition were insufficient against a disciplined, tactically flexible opponent who had no interest in honorable close combat. European armies began, slowly and painfully, to adapt, developing combined arms tactics, improving ranged capabilities, and eventually incorporating gunpowder. The age of the mounted knight as the decisive battlefield instrument had begun its long decline. When the Ottomans, themselves heirs to many Mongol tactical traditions, threatened Europe's heart 2 centuries later, the armies that met them were fundamentally different from the force that had marched out of Legnica on the morning of April 7, 1241. Legnica had forced that transformation. The catastrophe, it turned out, had been a form of education. The battlefield is farmland now. A small monument marks where Henry is believed to have fallen. Every year on April 9th, reenactors gather in period armor to walk the ground. But no recreation can recover what that smoke-filled morning actually felt like. The moment when an entire civilization's confidence in its own military supremacy was extinguished, and the slow, difficult work of building something better began.